Good afternoon and good morning to our participants from the US, and good afternoon for those in Europe. Welcome to Stefanini's webinar about Omnichannel, powering healthier customer engagement. I'm presenting this webinar together with my dear partner and colleague Andrei Frangetti, who is based in Bucharest, Romania. And today we will actually talk about one of the services that we are offering through our partner channel, so under the umbrella of Stefanini, but we want to make it really an interactive session. At the end of the session, you can ask your questions and give you a lot of information about Omnichannel for healthcare. So basically the title of our webinar, as you can see here, is Omnichannel Powering Healthier Customer Engagement. So Andre, please explain us, why is Omnichannel enabling healthier customer engagement for pharma companies specifically?
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Denis, for your kind introduction, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. That's a good question to start with, and actually I would like to start by clarifying a little bit what omnichannel means. As they say, a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So I think the best way to describe omnichannel is by contrasting and comparing it with multi-channel, which essentially is about communicating with the customer across multiple channels, but these channels are independent and they tell their own story to the customer, which is like hearing a number of different songs at the same time. And as you can imagine, this creates a little bit of noise. In contrast, omnichannel, in an omnichannel context, the channels actually, quote unquote, talk to each other and deliver a consistent story to the customer. So as you can see in this picture, the customer is at the center and they can start the story on any channel, and then they can continue it on another channel, yet still have hear a consistent story and have a consistent experience. So to summarize, in practical terms, omnichannel is about designing and delivering customer experiences that are seamless no matter what channel or function the customer interacts with, that are tailored to the needs and preferences of the customers, and also very importantly, that are aligned and serve also the company priorities and the patient unmet needs. Mm-hmm. So that's just to set the basis. Now, getting back to your question, Denis, we're seeing two things, especially since the pandemic, but not only. On the one hand, if we look at the healthcare, especially pharma, in the last few years, even 10 years, we have much more therapeutic options, and they are much more complex. So the complexity of the content of the topics is much higher, which means the customers need more clarity and an easier way to make decision. It's not information they lack, it's the simplification and clarity. That's on the need side. On the what happens side, what we see, especially with the pandemic, is that with more channels being live, a lot more communication has been pushed in the multi-channel context, which is not coordinated. So what happened is it generated a lot of noise, and instead of clarity, it generated more chaos. So on one hand, we have a higher need for clarity. On the other hand, we are generating much more noise, and this has really a negative impact both on the available time between patient and doctor. So this is on the one hand eating up their time, is wasting company resources, and not having that clarity maybe is not facilitating the patient access to the right treatment for them. And we actually ran an analysis and we estimated that for a mid-sized to small country, the amount of time potentially wasted in this unstructured interaction is actually eating up almost 170,000 potential patient-doctor consults. So you can imagine that's a pretty huge impact. Did you want to say something, Denis? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as a comment here that it's actually a way of diluting the information in such a way that the right channels are being used for the right information to the right patients and to the right end users, basically, who could be the patients, the clinicians, the doctors, the healthcare professionals, etc. So it's actually a signposting service to make the information more tangible, more customized, and to make better use of the magnitude of big data information that is flowing across the different channels to those user populations. Is that correct?
Absolutely, of course, considering keeping in mind that the doctors, the HCPs, are the gatekeepers of information for the patient, and they're the ones that should manage this relationship, and the industry, of course, should provide the appropriate information and tools to support their decision making and this conversation. Absolutely.
Okay, and so I know that we already had some successful cases here, successful customer stories with one of the or two of the top 10 pharma companies in the world. But where is the industry right now when it comes to omnichannel, and how do you see the journey happening for this type of services and applications towards the pharma industry?
Sure. So we've been talking about digital, multi-channel, omni-channel already since 2010 or even earlier. But to be frank, I don't feel that something major has happened in the industry until the pandemic. And when I say major, I don't refer to successful pilots or different attempts. I refer to a consistent way of implementing new ways of working in customer engagement. So something that works across affiliates, across the organization. Of course, with the pandemic, things have accelerated, and the need to change the way we engage with the customers at scale has become critical. Looking at other industries, because I think we all recognize that that pharma is slightly behind other industries when it comes to omnichannel and new ways of customer engagement. We've actually identified 4 major steps through which an industry or a company goes in this evolution of customer engagement, which we called the crawl, the walk, the run, and the fly stage. Essentially, in the crawl phase, companies start engaging with their customers using multiple channels. But as we've seen in the multi-channel picture, these are not necessarily, or most of the time, they are not correlated communications. But it's an important start. In the walk phase, this is where we start bringing together this different conversation on different channels and putting them into a consistent customer experience that is, as mentioned, linked and aligned with both company strategy and patient needs in the context of pharma, of course. Still, at this phase, there's not so much tailoring of the customer experience based on the different needs and preferences. This is something that is evolved in the 3rd stage, which we call run, where we see much more sophisticated ways of segmenting customers, much more actionable insights, and much more tailoring of all the different elements in the communication mix, the content, the channel mix, as well as the level of engagement, the level of investment, if you want. And finally, I think the the end goal is where we're able to adjust the customer experiences that we deliver based on real-time insights, and always be responsive, and sometimes even anticipating changes. But of course, we're not there yet. By and large, we feel that the industry is still in the crawl phase, but the good news is more and more companies are looking at ways to really move from uncoordinated communication to designing customer experiences. So there's, I think, a big effervescence right now into making this practical, and I hope that we'll see this in the coming year or two. That's just a general impression. Of course, if we look at different companies, they may be in different stages of evolution. And actually, what we've observed is that even within the same company, different affiliates would be at the different maturity levels. And even more than that, within the same affiliate, potentially you could have different brand teams in different therapeutic areas being more advanced than others. So the general positioning around the crawl is an average thing, but we really see quite big differences looking at different affiliates, different companies, and even different brand teams within the same company and affiliate.
Yeah, yeah, I see that this is a very complex topic actually, and depending, as you say, on the company, on the affiliates, on the therapeutic area, people are either in the crawl or the walk or almost in the run phase. So I guess it's a matter of explaining the journey very well and helping companies assess, basically, first of all, to create the journey end to end and to assess their position where they are right now, what their objectives are strategically, and how you can help them reach to the next level, basically. So that's understood. So I was actually wondering as well, what are the key barriers and problems you've seen when it comes to an effective omnichannel, based on the existing customers you have in this field and that we have together, but also in what the market actually sees as the biggest key barriers right now? Me, not being an expert in this level, I guess the magnitude of data is probably a big barrier. But how do you see the rest of the key barriers of problems when it comes to really efficient and effective omnichannel?
Okay, just before I answer your question, one thing I would like to underline here is that because we talk about a transformation, omnichannel as a transformation, it's not about where the champions within the organization are. It's about how do you scale and accelerate this transformation across the organization. So if you have some teams that are in the fly stage, that's amazing. But that's not yet success. Success is when your whole organization is there. Just a parenthesis. When it comes to barriers, of course, there are many different barriers that we see, and we broke them down in our opinion into three main barriers. Of course, data, and especially data quality, is a very real and practical challenge when it comes to implementation. But more of at a higher and abstract level, we see three types of barriers. The first one is lack of clarity and the misalignment in understanding expectations about omnichannel. I will go in details about each of them. The second one is what we call the elephant in the room, and it's a not recent, quite old gap between the strategy and execution. And I think this is really a critical thing to solve if we want to get to effective omnichannel. And finally, complexity is a very real and practical challenge when it comes to accelerating and scaling this transformation. And now to take them one by one, what I mean with each of them. In terms of clarity or lack of clarity and misalignment of understanding and expectations, we've seen three things. On the one hand, hiding behind the buzzwords. I think everybody has heard so many times the words omnichannel, personas, customer experience, AI, etc., etc. But what we see is that there's not an aligned understanding about what they mean. And here I don't mean a definition. I think most people can quote the definition. But if you look at the practical understanding, so how do we use these concepts in practice? What we've noticed, especially at the execution level, at the brand team level, is that different people have different understanding. And also,
if you probably ask the question, what is omnichannel? Like in the last years, when we were moving, everybody was talking about digital. If you would ask 10 companies what is digital, now the same thing with omnichannel, you would probably get 10 different definitions and ways of explaining what they mean by that. So I guess the same thing applies for the buzzwords like omnichannels, the personas, customer experience. So is it also a guideline towards centralizing acronyms, definitions, actually what effectively is omnichannel? That is also the strategic goal of a company, to get aligned between divisions and units and affiliates, to really align, as you say, have no gap between the strategy and the execution, knowing exactly peer to peer what they mean by omnichannel.
I think if we get to the definitions level, what we see in many companies is that they are quite well established, so they would have a definition for this. But I don't think that all the people inside the organization really internalize that definition and really understand what that means for them and how to act on this. So just staying at the definition level is not enough. It's about how do we put these concepts into action and what they mean and how we should act upon them at each level. And you mentioned digital, and indeed, we've seen that many times omnichannel and digital are kind of used interchangeably, and this is the misalignment number two. A lot of the expectation and thinking about omnichannel or digital is more focusing on technology and seeing digital or omnichannel, however we want to call it, as something else, something different from what we normally do with the customer engagement. So almost two different words and not one consistent story with many ways of delivering it. So somebody was telling me, why do we still talk about new channels when the internet has been mainstream for more than 30 years? So how many people that are working in pharma today have been working in pharma for 30 years? So the digital is not new anymore. So we shouldn't be talking about marketing and digital marketing. It's all communication. Digital provides some of the channels. And with this focus on technology, we also see another misaligned understanding that many people expect magical answers, I would call them. So intelligent algorithms that will give us, the best option to engage with the customers, and we don't need to know how they do it, and we don't need to put additional effort. But in reality, omnichannel is about being much more precise in how we design and deliver the customer experience, how we tailor them, and that means to a certain extent more work and different work, a different way of working. So this expectation about magic answers is again one that we don't find very reasonable, and that is a barrier. Of course, as a technology team, we absolutely believe in the magic that the technology can bring, but I think this needs to be helped by the organization and by the ways of working.
Yeah, so it's actually critical to identify the gap between the strategy and the execution in the field, basically, and try to leverage and to close that gap as close as best as possible. Did I understand this correctly?
That's the second point. So we need to have the right understanding and the right expectations, but then we need to have a way to put things in practice. And if we look at the planning process, on the one hand, at a simple level, we have the brand plans with the list of tactics, and then we have the cycle plans with a list of customers which we want to engage, and some frequency objectives by channel. It's absolutely impossible or very hard to see the connection between the two. So how does an objective of 5 visits or 10 emails reflect our strategic objectives? So we identify this gap, and this is the place where our strategic objectives actually have to be translated into customer experiences, meaning the right messages to the right customers in the right sequence, on the right channel, by the right functions, with the right content assets. So that's by and large missing, and also the link between this and the cycle plans that get executed is missing. And I think we cannot really talk about cross-functional alignment and cross-functional coordination just at the execution level. This needs to start at the planning level. So unless this planning gap is fixed, I don't think we can reasonably discuss about designing and delivering seamless customer experiences. And of course, closing the gap means process, means mindset, means capabilities. And to make the matter worse, it's the complexity, because we have so many different, as I mentioned, different elements to fit in together. So messages, functions, channels, customer segments, and you can potentially have hundreds of combinations between them, but only one combination delivers the right customer experience. So trying to work cross-functionally to identify that right customer experience and do it with the current ways of working with the current tools, with PowerPoint and Excel, it's not going to work. You just cannot manage this multi-layered complexity. So just to summarize, the barriers starts from the clarity to the ways of working, the bridging this old gap between strategy and execution, and finding the practical ways to manage the complexity of closing this gap.
Okay. So this is indeed quite complex, and I think companies not only have to understand the complexity, but also need to understand the journey and where they fit in the journey, and how to get to the next levels, to have a transformation implementation plan, and they can hook in at different levels. So looking at the complexity and the gaps and the risks actually of focusing on the wrong areas, what do you think, for the listeners here, for the attendees, actually, what are the key ingredients for a successful omni-channel solution implementation? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned, first and foremost, we need to treat this as a transformation. And in any transformation, we need to work at multiple levels. We need to have a sustained communication and executive support. So it's not enough to say once why we need omnichannel, why we do it. It has to be really sustained. Then we need, of course, to work on the mindsets, on the capabilities. We need to have the right processes and tools to close the gap, among others. And of course, it also goes down to talent and incentives. But these are, let's say, generic building blocks of any transformation. What we found that is really important in this particular case of the omnichannel transformation are five things. And actually, each of them require to work on all the other levels: communication, mindset, etc., etc. So first and foremost, I think companies need to make a mantra or almost an obsession from this building customer experience and building seamless, tailored, and aligned customer experiences. This has to be top of mind for everybody in the organization, from the brand teams to the leaders to the front people. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Secondly, really we need to focus on the fundamentals and get them right. It's much more important to fix the fundamentals than just to release some new fancy technology, chatbots, AI, etc., etc. I will actually deep dive here because I think it's very important. Thirdly, everybody talks about this, and it's about cross-functional coordination, and it's very important that this should happen both at thinking and planning level and also at the execution level. It sounds obvious, but it's not very easy. And again, this is about also process, about mindsets, about capabilities, and also about unblocking organizational roadblocks. Another very, very important learning that we had is that waiting to be ready and training people to be ready is not the right answer, because people start getting the practical understanding when they start doing things. So a training can provide the language and the concept, but it's only when they start really doing things that they understand what they don't know or haven't understood, and they're able to internalize. So really learning by doing is the best way to accelerate capability development and also mindset change. Don't wait until you think you're ready, because you'll never be ready. And finally, we really need, once we created the clarity processes and everything, we really need to help the teams manage the complexity, give them the right tools to do that. I said I'll go back to the fundamentals. We see here, and we really focus on three very important things that underpin the seamless, tailored, and aligned ambition. The first one is customer segmentation, a very old concept, but still where we have very different understanding. And I think it's really important to clarify what are the different perspectives of segmentation: personas, digital segmentation, value segmentation. How do they fit together, and how we use them in order to tailor the customer experience? So this has to do with the tailoring. The second area where we found a lot of alignment and clarification is required is about channels. On the one hand, the channel equivalence. So how do we compare different channel mixes? How do we understand what an optimal channel mix is? But also looking at what we call a channel playbook and understanding what channels are best fit for what communication objectives. And finally, putting everything together to discuss about customer experiences, about, first of all, the fact that as an industry, apart from the R&D, what we try to do is to drive behavioral change through communication and education, and this is done effectively through the right customer experience. So clarifying what the customer experience is and how do we build the right customer experience, putting all the elements together. And this is basically covering the seamless and the aligned part.
Yes. So that's very interesting, and I know we have been, participating to some RFPs, and I think the last one we won together, the feedback was that a lot of companies have, these ideas about omnichannel, and as you said very rightfully, they don't actually know what the full journey is. They're not aligned on the definitions, on the gaps, and everything. So maybe now is the time to move away a little bit from just a theory, but just to show the audience here some of the screens actually to show basically that this is not a conceptual thing, but it's something already developed and ready to be implemented and customized for the different customer needs. Could you maybe show some screens actually of how this effectively works in practice and show, a couple of screenshots actually of the system itself in the context of a real omnichannel project?
Sure, absolutely. So let me switch to the solution.
Yes.
Okay, so I hope you can see a nice graph here. I will only show three elements which I think are really important. So first of all, we were talking about the aligned and tailored customer experience and how we should build them starting from the behavioral change that we want to drive in our customers. So what we see here is basically for the different type of customers, for the different personas, where they are right now and where we want to take them in relation to our strategic imperatives. So basically here we're understanding how we need to change behaviors, and then based on that, what do we need to communicate? What is the right story for that type of customer? So essentially we're hitting two nails in the head. One is the alignment with the strategic imperatives or strategic objectives of the companies, which should also capture the patient perspective. The other is understanding and tailoring the story based on the customer situation. So if we move to a different persona, different customer persona, we see they are in a different current situation, we have different objectives, and we would have a slightly different story for them. So the tailoring and the alignment starts already from the building the story, and then the screenplay has to be put into a movie, which is our campaigns, omnichannel campaigns. And what you can see here is how the story flows, and we'll see all the different elements that make up the customer experience. On the one hand, obviously the timeline, we have the channels, and then all these different rectangles are touch points with the different customers. And you see different colors because they represent the different functions. So what we see here is a cross-functional and a cross-channel customer experience. We can see, for example, that we have an advisory board before a symposia, and then we follow up with some webinar satellites, satellite webinars, and face-to-face visits, and web, etc., etc. And behind each of them, behind each touch point, we can select the right type of customers, the right personas, and the right digital segments. We're selecting who is delivering that touch point. Is it a medical, marketing, sales touch point? What's the universe that we target and how much it will cost us? And what we plan to address, what are the communication objectives, and what materials we need to support that communication.
Yeah.
So
I see these journeys actually are integrated across divisions, departments, personas, etc. I assume that these are not really fixed or set in stone. It's really dynamic, I guess, adapting towards the reality of the market or what's happening or events. This is a dynamic tool that can everly be changed and adapted to accommodate the needs of the campaign, I assume.
absolutely. So this is what I showed you is just an example. This is where the brand teams come together and identify the right personas, understand, do this whole analysis, understand their current and desired behaviors, build the tailored story, and then put together the right customer experience and the right campaigns.
Yeah.
And they will obviously be different from period to period, from team to team, etc.
Yeah.
And I think,
Okay.
yes, so go ahead.
No, I was just looking at the time here. We have 10 minutes left, and I still had one question. I think an important question
Okay.
to ask before we can have some other questions from the audience, possibly. But I really would like, I think what is interesting for the audience is to learn what are the learnings that we had already working with our customers, implementing this innovative tool, which is pretty unique on the market. What are the key learnings? I know a few of them, of course, but you, from your perspective, from the implementation side, which are the key learnings we had basically together working with those customers for which we implemented this solution?
It seems I like number 3, so I will give you the top 3 learnings. The first
Okay.
one is really the importance of communication. So people need to understand why we're doing this, what it means for them, and agree with the direction. The tool comes to make their life easier. So the tool is not a goal in itself; it's part of a bigger transformation. So having very strong communication during the implementation, and not only during the implementation but post implementation, is extremely important. The second learning is that, I think I already mentioned this, we heard a lot of companies or affiliates saying, well, we're not yet ready to do this, we need to prepare more. And the learning is that you will never be ready, because it's readiness is a moving target. And as I said, you really start to understand what you don't understand when you start doing things. So I think it's much more important to start as soon as possible, and try to do things and learn and evolve step by step. And I think the third learning related actually to this second learning is to set the right level of ambition, not to try to be very sophisticated from the get-go. So maybe you don't need to have amazing personas definition and super tailored customer experiences. It's much more important to start simple. Make sure that you first of all address this cross-functional coordination and the creation of a seamless customer experience as a first win. Becoming more sophisticated in tailoring, I think this is a second step. So just summarizing, communication of why, very
Yeah,
important. It has to
communication.
start to do with it. Start, don't wait to be ready, because we'll never be ready. And have the right ambition. Take it step by step, and evolve. Now make sure that with each planning and execution cycle, you try to do something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit better.
Yeah, it's like in most projects, it's really having the buy-in from a strategic level from all the divisions, knowing what you will do. Start small, maybe with a pilot, roll it out, have a proof of concept, and then actually communicate, get it to the next level, and implement and expand on it. So that makes totally sense to me. Thank you so much for that. I'm just looking at the time. I know we have 45 minutes, so I would like to pause a little bit here and see if we have incoming questions. So I know I'm in touch with our marketing person who will inform me about that. If there are any questions, now is the time to post them. We will also record this session and post it, or give you the link to download it, and we will probably post it on our website as well. So any questions, please shoot now. If If not, I will pause for another 30 seconds now. We can do a small conclusion here in the meantime and close off the webinar a little bit ahead of time. But I think 30 minutes or 35 minutes webinars are ideal to give you a high-level overview of our findings in the industry towards omnichannel. You have seen that we made this presentation not commercial at all. It's really to give you the insights, the challenges, the objectives, and also the gaps actually towards a successful omnichannel implementation. Obviously, we are offering these solutions, so feel free to ask more questions if you have those more on a strategic or a commercial level. Other than that, I would like to thank you, Andre, for your distinguished expertise in this area. And I have not seen any questions come in right now. So I propose to conclude this seminar as such. We will send you the presentation and this session at the end with our email addresses. Please don't hesitate. I'm sure you got my invitation via Stefanini as well. Thank you so much, Andre, and looking forward to another many years of fruitful collaboration under the umbrella of Stefanini selling omnichannel solutions to the pharmaceutical healthcare industry together. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, and thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you. Bye-bye.